Denise from Salvaged Inspirations, and thanks so much for joining me today. Today I have a really fun furniture flip for you. I've turned these dated tables from my local restore into these modern, sleek looking, absolutely gorgeous side tables by adding hairpin table legs and actually flipping the direction of the entire table. So I can't wait to share this with you. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Just let me get set up and I will be right back. I picked up this twin side table set from my local restore. It was actually the side view that really attracted me to these tables, not the front, because it looks quite dated with the drawer. But they were in really, really good condition and selling for $20 a piece. The very first thing I did once I brought it into my workshop was unscrew this dated hardware, even before I cleaned it, which I usually always clean first, but this hardware just had to go. It was an eyesore. After the hardware was removed, I gave it a really good cleaning with Dixie Belle's White Lightning. You can also use a TSP substitute. You could use Dawn with water, water and vinegar. Any of these will work. I like putting my White Lightning into a spray bottle and just spraying it and then going over it with a sponge. I find this so much easier, but you could also put it in a bucket and just clean it up that way. And don't forget the underneath of your pieces. As I mentioned in one of my other videos, if it's not clean enough to hold my underwear, it's not clean enough. And I'm hoping you guys are doing the same thing with your furniture makeovers, especially if it's going to be a piece that's going to be on the market for sale. So I did flip over these tables and give the underside a really good cleaning as well. To fill my hardware holes, I tried something different this time because I'm kind of addicted to my Bondo. However, I've seen a few furniture painters using epoxy sticks on their Instagram page. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to try this Gorilla epoxy stick. It's supposed to be all-purpose and it's super easy to use. All I did was just rip off a small piece, and then it says to knead it so the two colors blend in together, and you're supposed to knead it for 30 to 60 seconds. I wore gloves as in the instructions, and also it also says to make sure that the two colors are blended in perfectly, otherwise it will not harden. And then after I blended it all in together and squished it all together, I just kind of squished it in the hardware holes. So long as you do this within 5 minutes, they say you have like a 5-minute window play time for it. I wasn't sure how easy or difficult it was going to be to sand these epoxy-filled hardware holes. With Bondo, it's very difficult because it dries rock hard. I mean, you can drill into it, etc. So I usually use my sander, my DeWalt sander, to get a nice flush finish. However, with this epoxy, it did sand by hand. I started using a coarse sanding pad that didn't really do the job, so I switched over to an 80 grit sandpaper, and that seemed to flatten it out just perfectly fine. And then I switched back to my coarse sandpaper to get a good scuff sanding on the rest of the drawer. For the body of the piece, I used my DeWalt orbital sander with 100 grit sandpaper just to give it an overall good scuff sanding to accept the paint. And for the drawers, I used the coarse sanding pad just so I could get into all the corners and all the molding. Here's what the two tables look like all scuff sanded. Here I'm applying BIN shellac base primer and just spot priming. I just wanted to make sure I spot primed the epoxy hardware holes. And now I am taping off the top because I decided that I wanted to use a gel stain on the top rather than paint the whole thing. I thought it would be nice to see some existing grain on this piece rather than have it just a solid color. I used No Pain Gel Stain in Walnut by Dixie Belle. I have a full tutorial on how to apply gel stain because it can be applied over existing finishes. That's the fabulous part of it. It's quite easy to work with. And here I'm just applying it with a really inexpensive foam craft brush. Doesn't matter what you use. They have stain applicators. You can apply it with shop towels or a lint-free towel. And as you're applying it, you'll notice that I'm not really worrying which direction. I'm just getting it on. I'm getting the product on the wood. And then I'll smooth it out in the direction of the grain after it's all on and in all the nooks and crannies. But just get the product on and then worry about smoothing it out afterwards. And here I am smoothing it out more towards the direction of the grain. Then I take a shop towel and I just wipe it back. It's very, very easy to use. And you can tell what a beautiful finish, right? I mean, already that looks 1,000 times better. I wanted to match the stain on the panels to the stain on the top. So here I just chose a smaller foam craft brush and I'm applying the walnut gel stain into the panels on the side, on the length. I didn't actually put them on the shorter side because I wanted to change directions of these tables so they look more modern. So in my mind, I thought, okay, I'm going to paint the shorter sides black and just highlight the longer side panels with the walnut gel stain. Again, I'm just applying it with the foam brush. I'm using a little craft brush or artist brush to get right into all the corners. And then I used my blue shop towel to wipe it back just to show the grains some more. I bought these hairpin table legs off Amazon, and isn't Amazon awesome? Amazon Prime in particular. I ordered them about 11 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, and I got them delivered to me by 10 a.m. the Thursday morning, so not even 24 hours, which is fabulous. They're 16-inch hairpin legs, which brings these tables up to, I believe, 23-inch height, which is the standard. I think it's anywhere between 22 and 25 inches for a standard side table. So that goes really, really well with these side tables. And they're beautiful. They're satin black and they look lovely. So now came the tricky part for me, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't intimidated to cut off 8 table legs. So they had to be cut flush. So when I went online to see how to do this, or the easiest way to do this, it was to create a jig. And a jig is any type of guide used to control the accuracy of another tool. So a jig is used when repeatability and accuracy are needed by holding the work and guiding your tool. So in this case, I used plywood to create a corner jig so it would help me cut off each leg evenly and flush with the rest of the table. The steps I took to make the jig was, one, I made sure my plywood was nice and square. Then I measured flush with the table skirt. And I used a pencil to draw out my measurements. I cut 2 pieces exactly the same dimension with my chop saw. I screwed them together to make a corner jig. And then I use the jig on each and every corner to help guide my oscillating tool to cut off the legs nice and flush and even. Yay! I was so pleased with myself. And then I installed the hairpin legs, which I placed the brackets on the corner of each table and with a pencil drew in where my pilot holes were going to go. I drilled the pilot holes, and then using the existing hardware that came with the legs, I screwed in all 4 legs. Now, because I turned this table sideways to make it look more modern, the side of the table, which used to be the front of the table, had that one little drawer. So what I wanted it to do was be a self-contained unit and not have a wonky side drawer coming out of it, coming out of the side. So I sealed it shut by screwing in the leg and actually screwing in the drawer so it does not budge. So when I added the 2 legs on either side of the drawer, excuse me, and screwed them in, now the drawer does not open. Having said that, when I published the blog post, one of my readers came up with a fabulous idea. And it could have been, instead of closing it all up, what I could have done was used magnets. And it could have been a little extra storage space, even if the unit was facing the lengthwise. Somebody could have used that as storage space for maybe items that they don't require access to a lot of the time. And I will keep that in mind for next time. That's a brilliant idea. What I did was, after all the legs were installed, I gave the corners a light sanding so they weren't sharp, and just to dull them down and round them up a little bit. And then what I did was I masked off the stained portion so I could start painting the rest of the piece. Here's a quick tip when masking off furniture. I don't really worry about where it ends or starts as I'm masking it off, but then I use an X-Acto knife to cut the corners precise. In this case, the table had little grooves that I used to control the straight line, but when I don't have the grooves, I just bring in a ruler and an X-Acto knife. I get these from the dollar store. They're super inexpensive. Just make sure the blade is really sharp and it'll cut it precise, and you'll have pristine straight lines or straight perfect corners. I chose Silk all-in-one mineral paint in the color Anchor, and I also used a zebra angle brush. It's an actual 1 1/4 triangle paintbrush to get into the corners and the moldings of this piece. As you can see, the brushes are very, very angled, and it worked really well to get right into the grooves, as you'll see here when I'm painting it on. No masking required. You just have to watch what you're doing, and it gives a beautiful, perfect, crisp edge. Silk all-in-one mineral paint is exactly what it says. It does have a primer included, and it also has a top coat included. So it's a real time saver. And I have to say, it's one of my favorites to spray with. I love using it with my paint gun. I'm kind of addicted, actually. But in this case, I decided to brush it on. I've brushed it on numerous times now, and it's a lovely, lovely paint to brush as well because it's self-leveling. When you're using it, you don't want to overbrush. You have like a 5-minute window. I mean, there's open time to work with it for sure, but you don't want to go back and forth over the same piece as you may do when you're blending, say, a chalk paint, for instance. Another comparison from chalk paint to this silk mineral paint is chalk paint you can actually spray. You can use a little bit of water with because they're usually generally very thick. So you can spray it down and make it a little thinner to either create blending or just to get it on really smoothly. With this silk mineral paint, no water required unless you are shooting it through a gun, and then you can thin it ever so slightly. But really, it goes on just lovely. You can see it gliding on here. There's not 100% full coverage on the first coat. It did require 2 coats to get this full coverage in this sophisticated black, but it glides on just beautifully. If I had known that I was going to use Silk all-in-one mineral paint, I wouldn't have bothered with the BIN shellac spot priming, but that's the way furniture painting goes. I kind of go with the flow. I wasn't exactly sure what type of paint I was going to use or even what color I was going to use right at the start. So a little extra prime never hurts. I ended up using my Dixie Belle mini brush to do the flat surfaces, and that worked beautifully. I painted the top and the sides, which were originally the front of this piece with the Dixie Belle mini, just to make it quicker. You want to take a larger brush just to get more coverage. But as I mentioned, this paint is self-leveling, and I want you to see here how part of it shows like very, very fine brush lines once it's wet, but then as it's drying, it is smooth as silk. Maybe that's why they named it Silk. But it really, really lays nicely. So if you've ever had problems with brush strokes and you're looking for a perfectly smooth finish, this paint is great for getting a super smooth, polished look. So here's how it all came together. Here's the before, and here's the after. I'm loving the contrast of the black against the warm walnut wood, and the hairpin table legs really update the piece. I think flipping these tables really created a big difference and made them way more modern looking, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think. I hope you like this makeover as much as I enjoyed doing it, and I just love how it turned out. If you found any value in this video, please consider subscribing or hitting the like or leaving a comment down below. You can also find me over at salvagedinspirations.com, where I have over 400 furniture painting tutorials teaching you how to make your furniture beautiful. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Stay safe, and I'll see you again soon. Bye, guys.